You had plans. Real ones. And then you looked at your dog and canceled everything. What if that choice was not laziness? What if it was something much deeper inside you? Have you ever felt more relief canceling plans than you ever felt attending them? Why does leaving your dog feel like leaving a piece of yourself behind? What does it say about a person when staying home feels more honest than going out? This is not about being antisocial. It is about what your dog reveals about who you are. Before we explore this behavior, let us name it honestly. Canceling plans for your dog is not simple avoidance or laziness. It is a genuine and meaningful psychological signal worth listening to carefully and without judgment. Millions of people around the world do this. They decline invitations, invent excuses, or feel genuine guilt about leaving their dog, even for a few hours. Yet very few truly understand the deeper reason why. Psychologists who study human-animal attachment have found that this behavior is far from trivial. It points to a complex and layered web of emotional needs and nervous system responses that most people never think to examine. The person who cancels plans for their dog is navigating a genuine internal tension between competing emotional worlds, often quietly choosing the one that feels more authentic and deeply safe to them. Research in anthrozoology, the scientific study of human-animal relationships, shows that strongly bonded pet owners display measurably different patterns of stress response and emotional regulation. What we are really examining is a window into the architecture of a person's emotional world and what they have quietly, sometimes painfully, learned across a lifetime about where safety and authenticity actually live. But the real question is this: what is it about human social interaction that sometimes feels less nourishing than sitting quietly on a couch with your dog? What is happening in that comparison? Is it that people have found a connection with their dog that feels more honest than what social settings offer? Free of performance, free of the exhausting daily labor of impression management? Or has the social world simply begun to feel more like work than rest? A space that now requires so much energy that the mere thought of it makes the body contract, rather than open with anticipation? When exactly did socializing shift from joy to obligation? When did anticipating a gathering become a persistent low hum of dread? And when did your dog become the quiet permission to feel relieved about saying no? These are not rhetorical questions. Answered honestly, they reveal an enormous amount about what a person truly needs and what they have been quietly, sometimes unknowingly, protecting all along. The real psychological question is not whether canceling plans is healthy or not. It is what the deep relief of staying home with your dog reveals about your relationship with yourself and with others. Let us begin with social fatigue. For many people, social interaction is not simply physically tiring. It is emotionally costly in ways that are genuinely difficult to articulate without feeling deeply misunderstood. Social fatigue happens when the demands of social engagement consistently exceed available emotional resources. It is not shyness. It is not depression. It is an honest energy equation that simply does not balance. When you cancel plans to stay home, your nervous system is making a quiet and important calculation. It is weighing the cost of the social event against your current emotional reserves and choosing honestly over performance. This is an intelligent response from the body. The body knows things the conscious mind sometimes refuses to acknowledge. When gathering feels heavy or dread-filled, that feeling is real information worth honoring without shame. There is also the psychology of introversion, which is far more nuanced than most people understand. Introversion is not about disliking people or being antisocial. It is about where a person draws their restoration. Introverts restore through solitude, genuinely quiet environments, and interactions that feel real rather than performed. A large, noisy social gathering can deplete an introvert in ways that are genuinely and measurably physical and deeply emotional. For an introvert, the dog is truly the perfect restoration companion. It does not demand conversation or any form of performance. It shares space without noise or expectation. It simply exists warmly and quietly alongside you. But this behavior is not only about introversion. Even highly extroverted people sometimes cancel plans for their dog. In those cases, something entirely different is at work, something related to the quality and depth of available connection. Psychologist Abraham Maslow placed belonging and love as foundational human psychological needs. But belonging, to feel genuinely and lastingly real, must be unconditional. In many social settings, belonging still feels like something earned rather than freely given. At parties and gatherings, we often perform belonging rather than experience it. We edit ourselves in real time, adjusting our language and humor to remain acceptable. For sensitive people, that performance is genuinely exhausting. Your dog requires none of that performance. It does not care about your outfit or your opinions. Your dog simply wants to be near you. That is the entirety of its relational agenda. This contrast sharpens after experiences of conditional acceptance. If you have been judged or welcomed only as a curated version of yourself, the dog becomes a profound and deeply felt alternative. The dog becomes proof that you are enough as you are. Not a project to be improved, not a performance to be evaluated. Simply a person whose presence is fully and completely welcomed. There is also anticipatory anxiety, which plays a significant role in plan cancellation. This is the particular dread that arrives well before an event, often far more intense than anything actually experienced during the event itself. For people who have developed social anxiety, even imagining a gathering triggers a stress response. The nervous system begins preparing for threat before any threat exists. Canceling the plan removes that trigger entirely. And here the dog becomes significant in a new way. Staying home is not just the absence of the trigger. It is the active presence of something genuinely calming and regulating. The dog does not represent avoidance of something difficult. It represents the active choice of something nourishing, something that feeds rather than depletes. That is a fundamentally different psychological position. We should also talk about obligation versus desire. Many social invitations are accepted not from real desire to attend, but from subtle pressure that quietly masquerades as a friendly invitation you cannot easily refuse. When a person begins canceling obligation-based plans in favor of authentic experiences, including simply being home quietly with their dog, something genuinely important is happening. They're beginning to honestly honor their own needs. There is real courage in saying no to what depletes you. There is wisdom in choosing what restores you, even when the world does not understand why a dog feels more nourishing than a crowd. The psychology of autonomy also matters. Making free choices genuinely aligned with your values is one of the strongest known predictors of psychological well-being. Choosing your dog, then, is a meaningful act of genuine self-determination. Now let us look closely at what happens in the body when you make this choice, because the biology is genuinely fascinating and deeply validating of what the emotional self already knows instinctively and honestly. When you cancel plans and settle with your dog, your body shifts almost immediately. The sympathetic nervous system, which governs stress, begins to downregulate. The parasympathetic system, governing rest, takes over. This shift is measurable. Studies show that within minutes of contact with a dog, heart rate slows, blood pressure drops, and muscles begin releasing the tension they have been holding all day. The brain simultaneously releases a cascade of neurochemicals associated with safety and pleasure. Oxytocin floods the system. Dopamine rises steadily. Serotonin follows. The entire neurochemical environment shifts from vigilance toward warmth and genuine belonging. Now compare this to attending an event you are genuinely dreading. Cortisol is elevated. The prefrontal cortex is working hard overtime to manage social cues and self-presentation. The system remains in a sustained state of effortful performance. The body always keeps score, as trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk famously wrote. The body knows the difference between an evening that drains it and one that genuinely restores it, even when the mind argues otherwise. Evolutionary psychology offers another lens. Human beings evolved in small, intimate groups where social dynamics were personal and consistent. Our brains were shaped by that world, not by the large impersonal gatherings we navigate today. Modern social events are often large and impersonal, filled with people who barely know each other beneath the surface. To the ancient parts of the brain, that kind of social environment can feel subtly and persistently wrong. Being home with your dog actively activates the brain's circuitry for close, genuinely intimate tribal belonging. It is small. It is consistent. It is deeply known. To an ancient brain, that environment feels exactly right. There is also the remarkable neuroscience of eye contact. When you and your dog hold each other's gaze, both brains release oxytocin in what researchers call a mutual gaze bonding loop. This is genuinely neurologically significant. This mutual gaze bonding is typically reserved for the deepest human attachments, between parents and infants, between new lovers. That a dog can trigger it reveals how neurologically real and profound the bond truly is. The default mode network, active during rest and quiet self-reflection, responds very differently to low-demand versus high-demand social environments. With your dog, this network can finally rest rather than monitor, allowing deep integrative processing to occur. Time with your dog is not simply relaxing. It may allow your brain to do the kind of quiet integrative work that only happens when you are genuinely at rest, not managing appearances or performing. The polyvagal nerve, a key biological regulator of social engagement and nervous system state, is also powerfully involved. Dogs naturally activate vagal pathways associated with calm connection through soft sounds, warm eye contact, and gentle touch. Your body is not irrational preferring the evening at home with your dog. It is choosing the environment where it can genuinely breathe, rest, and be fully itself without the constant cost of social vigilance. Now let us turn to the emotional dimension. Understanding the biology is only part of the picture. The other part is what the choice to stay home is really saying about your deeper needs in life. Every human being carries core emotional needs that must be met for genuine well-being. We need to feel safe. We need to feel accepted without invisible conditions quietly attached to the fact of our acceptance. When these core needs are consistently met, social interaction tends to feel energizing. When they are chronically unmet or met conditionally, the entire social world begins to feel like a transaction rather than a genuine gift. Many people who cancel plans for their dogs have experienced social rejection or conditional acceptance. Not dramatic betrayals, but the slow cumulative weight of small moments where they felt less than fully welcome. These accumulated moments teach the nervous system something important. They teach it that social environments carry risk. That belonging must be earned. That revealing your true self is dangerous. Gradually, gatherings begin to feel like exposure. The dog is a direct antidote to this learned wariness. With your dog, there is no risk of rejection, no possibility of being too much or too little. The dog cancels the entire social calculus. There is also emotional intimacy, which is distinct from social activity. You can attend dozens of events monthly and never experience genuine emotional intimacy. And you can find it every evening on a couch with your dog. Genuine emotional intimacy requires presence, authenticity, and real vulnerability. It requires being seen as you actually are, without performance. Your dog creates those exact conditions every single day, without asking anything at all in return from you. For people who feel lonely even in crowds, the dog is not a substitute for human connection. It is simply the one space where they do not feel lonely. That distinction is psychologically enormous. The psychology of home also plays a role. Home is not simply a physical location. It is a psychological concept, a space associated with safety and the permission to be genuinely unguarded and fully yourself. When your dog is present, home activates fully. It becomes warm and purposeful and inhabited. Leaving that warmth to attend a social event that does not feel meaningful can feel like leaving something truly sacred. There is also a caretaking dimension here. Many people feel genuine concern about leaving their dogs. This is not irrational. It is the natural expression of a caregiving attachment, which is profoundly human. The caregiving bond triggers neurological systems similar to parental attachment. When you worry about your dog being alone, you are experiencing real separation distress that feels like a genuine moral consideration. The caretaking bond adds another layer to why canceling plans feels not just comfortable but right. You are honoring a genuine responsibility to a being who depends on you. That feels like integrity, not avoidance. All of these threads together paint a deeply coherent picture. Staying home with your dog is a rich intersection of attachment needs, nervous system wisdom, relational history, emotional honesty, and love that is entirely and beautifully real. Now let us talk about the kinds of people who most often make this choice. This behavior does not belong to any single personality type. It shows up across many psychological profiles, each with its own story. The first type is the restorative introvert. This person is acutely sensitive to energy expenditure. Every social event carries a real cost they are aware of. They budget their energy carefully and protect it. For the restorative introvert, canceling plans is never rudeness. It is responsible self-management. They know that attending an event when their emotional reserves are empty will leave them unable to function well the next day. The second type is the wounded socializer. This person genuinely wants human connection, but has been hurt enough times that social settings now feel subtly and persistently unsafe. Old scars from exclusion still live in the body. For the wounded socializer, the dog is the space where old wounds are not triggered. It is where genuine connection remains possible without risking the pain of human social rejection. The dog is safety. The third type is the authentic seeker. This person has a low tolerance for small talk and performance. They crave real depth in every interaction and leave shallow gatherings feeling emptier than before they arrived. For the authentic seeker, the dog offers what most parties cannot: honest, wordless, meaning-filled presence. There is no pretense, no shallow chit-chat, just two beings sharing space in a way that feels genuinely real. The fourth type is the devoted caregiver. For this person, the bond with their dog is a sacred responsibility. They feel their dog's needs with the same urgency they would feel for someone they deeply love. The devoted caregiver does not cancel plans to avoid the world. They cancel because leaving their dog for something unnecessary genuinely violates their own deep sense of what loyalty and real care require of them. The fifth type is the anxious avoider. This person cancels primarily from fear and anticipatory anxiety. The dog provides emotional comfort that makes staying home feel not just acceptable, but genuinely virtuous and right. The anxious avoider deserves compassion. The relief they feel is real. But if avoidance becomes habitual, it can narrow their world over time. The dog's comfort is genuine, but it can become a beautiful trap. Which of these types do you recognize in yourself? Perhaps you are a blend of several. There is no judgment here. Each one tells the story of a person trying to take good care of themselves. Let us go one layer deeper, into the space most people never examine. Beneath the adult who cancels plans is often a younger person who learned something formative about belonging and whether it was ever safe. Developmental psychologists tell us that childhood social experiences leave lasting imprints on the nervous system. The child left out at recess carries that memory in the body long after the playground is gone. If you grew up where belonging felt conditional, where you had to suppress parts of yourself to be accepted, your nervous system learned something lasting and powerful. Social spaces are where you must become someone else. That lesson does not simply disappear in adulthood. It continues quietly shaping how your body responds to invitations, to gatherings, to the anticipation of being in a room full of people who might be silently evaluating you. Imagine a young child who needed something simple: consistent warmth, predictable presence, someone glad they existed, not for what they could become, but simply because they were there. Some children never receive that basic gift. And then you come home to your dog, and the old lesson is completely reversed. You do not have to perform or earn your place. You are simply unconditionally welcomed as the exact person you already are. For many people, the dog is quietly healing old social wounds. Not through formal therapy or intentional work, but through the daily repetition of experiencing what genuine, uncomplicated acceptance actually feels like in a living relationship. Each time you choose your dog over an obligation that does not serve you, you are doing what your younger self rarely had permission to do. Saying clearly that your comfort and your truth matter enough to protect. This is a form of reparenting, giving the younger, more frightened version of yourself the protection it never fully received. Your dog, simply by being exactly what it is, has become a quiet catalyst for healing. Let us widen the lens now. What we are really discussing is a symptom of something much larger in how modern society has organized human connection. We have made socializing abundant and genuine intimacy increasingly rare. We live in a culture that rewards extroversion and constant social availability. The person who is always visible and always on is celebrated loudly. The person choosing quiet evenings with their dog is quietly judged as strange. But perhaps the real question is why we have built a social world so loud and performative that an animal on the couch is a more nourishing alternative than what the world offers most evenings. Your dog is holding up a quiet mirror, reflecting what connection could genuinely feel like stripped of ego, hierarchy, and the exhausting labor of impression management. That vision is worth holding on to carefully and honestly. The quiet room with your dog is not a retreat from life. It is a return to what life is for: presence, simplicity, warmth, and the peace that comes from being somewhere you are genuinely loved without condition. If this video resonated, it is because it named something you have genuinely felt but never quite found words for. That feeling is real. That choice you make again and again is nothing to be ashamed of. You are not broken for preferring your dog's company over a gathering. You are not antisocial or emotionally stunted. You found one relationship that feels genuinely safe and real, and you protect it. That is not a flaw. If this video moved something in you, please like it and subscribe so these conversations can reach people who need them. Leave a comment about a time you stayed home for your dog and felt completely right.